In the frozen silence of a North European forest, a Navy man carrying scars the world could not see walked into a storm he never expected and found a woman fighting for her last breath and a K9 willing to give his own to save her.
Pull, come on, pull!
This isn't just a rescue. It's a story of miracles born in the darkest hours, of a soldier rediscovering hope, a survivor finding courage, and a loyal dog proving that love can outrun death itself. If you believe loyalty is a gift from God, if you believe light still rises after the coldest night, then stay with us. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story so more hearts can find their own sunrise. A gray northern dawn pressed against the frozen treetops, cold mist drifting low over the snow-crusted earth, like the breath of something ancient. The air was painfully sharp, slicing into exposed skin with the clean precision of a honed blade, and every pine branch sagged beneath a thin sheen of ice. It was the kind of morning that swallowed noise whole, the kind that made a man feel as though he were moving through the hollow chest of a slumbering giant. Elias Grant advanced through the timberline with measured, disciplined steps, his silhouette merging into the muted palette of winter greens and iron grays, his breath the only visible movement in that vast, frozen world. Elias was 33, tall, almost 6'2", with a frame formed by years of rigorous conditioning rather than vanity. His muscles carried the solid density of a man who had spent half his life in armor, the kind of strength forged in military training grounds and unforgiving deployments. His jaw was angular, sharply defined beneath a few days' worth of stubble that darkened his fair skin, giving him a weathered look that fit the quiet severity in his storm-blue eyes. His hair, a short-cropped brown, bristled slightly from the cold beneath a wool-lined tactical hood. Everything about him seemed carved for purpose: the straight spine, the measured breathing, the quiet scanning of his surroundings. Yet what stood out most was not his discipline, but the heaviness buried beneath it. The way his eyes lingered a fraction too long on empty spaces, the way he held silence like an old companion. Something in his past clung to him, shaping his stillness, sharpening his instincts. Some soldiers carried scars on their bodies. Elias carried his in his restraint. Moving at his left flank was Rook, a 4-year-old K9 with a charcoal black coat sleek enough to reflect the frost-brightened landscape. The dog was large for a shepherd, his body long and muscular, his head broad and powerful. His ears stood alert, angled forward like two listening blades, while his eyes, golden, intelligent, and terribly focused, missed nothing. Rook's steps were silent even in the crusted snow, each movement smooth and rehearsed, displaying the unmistakable precision of a combat-trained K9. He was not just a dog, he was a soldier forged by obedience, instinct, and loyalty. Elias trusted him more than he trusted most people. Rook trusted Elias absolutely. Together, they cut a path along the northern ridgeline, performing reconnaissance on what had initially been logged as a routine patrol. Except Elias had learned long ago that in these forests, nothing stayed routine for long. The mission was meant to take them along a perimeter sweep around a newly established research facility, a station remote enough that even satellite communications flickered. The place worked on meteorological surveillance and cryogenic atmospheric readings, nothing of interest on paper, but the U.S. Navy seldom put boots near a forest unless there was more to the story. Elias didn't ask questions. He had learned to live within the perimeter of what was given and what was suspected. A faint chime vibrated against his chest. Elias paused, one gloved hand rising in a silent directive. Rook instantly froze, dropping to a low stalk, his golden eyes fixed ahead. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Elias pressed a finger to the small tactical screen on his vest. A signal crackled weakly, distorted as though scraped across static. For a moment, nothing resolved. Then, 3 jagged pulses flickered across the screen. Interference, but not natural. Elias narrowed his eyes. The signature was coming from the research station, Sector 7B, Southwest Ridge. It was not part of the usual environmental anomalies. This had a rhythm, a deliberate pattern, almost like a distress call forced through corrupted channels. "That's not weather noise," he murmured under his breath, though Rook was the only soul who heard him. The dog huffed quietly, as if in agreement. Elias replayed the pulses in his mind, trying to place the structure behind them. He had been trained in signal intelligence before transferring to his current unit. Noise always had a fingerprint, and this fingerprint was wrong. His jaw tightened as the static resolved briefly into a truncated communication ID, one belonging to the meteorological engineer stationed at the facility, Lily Hart. Elias remembered the briefing photo. A woman in her late 20s, dark hair tied in a loose knot, wearing square-framed glasses and a smile that looked slightly forced, in the way of people who found comfort in machines more than crowds. She wasn't military, though her work supported military interests. Civilians had no defenses out here. Civilians had no weapons. Civilians vanished fast in forests like this. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle, a small knot forming in his chest. Not panic, but something heavier and older. A memory flickered uninvited. A desert village years ago, smoke-laced air, a collapsed building, and a civilian boy he hadn't reached in time. The weight of that day never left him. He had sworn after that deployment that he would never again ignore a warning sign, no matter how faint. A second pulse hit his receiver, sharper this time. Distorted, like someone had forced a data purge through a dying system. Elias exhaled slowly. "Something's wrong," he whispered. Rook's ears twitched, his body vibrating with a readiness that mirrored Elias's internal shift. The dog sensed tension the way others sense temperature. Elias reached for his communication line and hesitated. Protocol stated he should report anomalies. Protocol stated he should not deviate from patrol. Protocol had also failed him once in the desert. It would not fail him again. "Rook," he whispered, turning slightly toward the southwest ridge. "We're changing course." Rook let out a low, quiet rumble, not a growl, but an expression of unity. He pivoted alongside Elias, ready to follow wherever the man led. Elias shut off the comlink for a moment, giving himself a bubble of silence. He felt the forest press in, not with hostility, but with anticipation, as though it too sensed that something unseen shifted beneath its frozen skin. The path to the research station cut through a denser stretch of pine, a corridor of shadowed trunks and packed snow. Elias moved quickly, each step controlled but urgent, his senses sharpened, his mind triangulating possibilities. Breach, sabotage, kidnapping, or something darker. Lily Hart was not a field agent. If someone targeted the station, she would be the weakest link. He felt a surge of irritation at himself for not trusting his initial instinct earlier. The Navy trained soldiers to follow orders, but life had trained Elias to follow intuition. And intuition now clenched at him like a cold hand. They descended the slope, weaving through the clustered pines. Ice cracked softly beneath boots and paws. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint metallic scent of trouble, something out of place amid the frost and the mossy rot. Easy, Elias murmured. Rook lifted his nose, sniffing the air with sharp precision. His body stiffened. Elias followed his gaze. Something glinted faintly ahead, half buried in snow. He advanced cautiously. A strip of bright red fabric lay torn against a fallen log, its color too warm, too human for the dead palette of the forest. Elias crouched, brushing snow aside. It wasn't part of military gear. It wasn't weather equipment. It looked like a piece of a scarf. Lily Hart's personnel file had mentioned she often wore one. A red knitted scarf gifted by her sister, something she apparently refused to leave behind even in field assignments. Elias's pulse tightened. The forest felt suddenly smaller, its silence oppressive rather than serene. He slipped the fabric into a side pouch and rose. "We're going," he said, voice low. Rook moved a step ahead, golden eyes now sharp with purpose. The dog didn't need orders to understand urgency. They pressed deeper into the woods, cutting toward the station's coordinates. The trees thickened, the wind shrank into a whispering hiss, and a deeper wrongness grew in Elias's gut, like the forest itself recoiled from whatever lay ahead. His thoughts drifted to Lily, not her face, but what it meant to be alone, unarmed, and suddenly hunted. Elias understood that fear. He had lived it once, as a young recruit trapped under 6 feet of rubble after an explosion in Kandahar. Heat, dust, the smell of concrete and blood, the inability to move, the crushing weight of waiting for someone, anyone, to find you. He had clawed at the debris with bleeding fingers until a K-9 team pulled him out. That rescue shaped him, shaped his loyalty to dogs like Rook, shaped the silent promise he carried inside. No one gets left alone in the dark. Ahead, a faint hum cut through the quiet, low, intermittent, mechanical. Elias slowed. Rook lowered into a stalking crouch. The last stretch of trees parted to reveal the station's outline, a squat concrete structure half buried into the hillside, its antenna tower blinking faintly, its perimeter fencing sagging in a way that suggested forced entry. No smoke, no lights, no movement. The place looked drained, like a corpse with its eyes open. Elias raised his rifle, moving forward with a predator's caution. Rook stayed close, tail still, posture rigid. A guardhouse near the gate stood empty. The snow in front of it was churned, marked by boots dragged rather than walked. Elias's breath steamed in short pulses. Something violent had happened here, and recently. He reached for his receiver again, then lowered it. Reporting now would cost precious minutes. Minutes Lily Hart might not have. His mission was no longer reconnaissance. It was rescue. He stepped across the threshold, entering the deadened perimeter. A metallic groan rolled through the building as the wind pushed against a damaged door, the sound echoing like a warning. Rook growled low in his throat, soft but certain. Elias exhaled, his resolve settling like stone. "We're too late for prevention," he whispered, "but maybe not too late for her." The cold northern forest stretched endlessly behind them, but the shadows ahead felt deeper, heavier, an invitation and a challenge, both. Elias lifted his rifle and advanced toward the ruined entrance, Rook pacing steadily beside him, the two moving as one into the darkness where Lily Hart's fate waited to be discovered. Snow whispered against the reinforced glass panels of the research station, the soft rhythmic tapping like a distant metronome keeping time with Lily Hart's heartbeat. The building was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, as though the machinery beneath the floorboards was holding its breath. Lily sat hunched over her central console, her slender fingers gliding across the holographic interface with the precision of someone whose mind always moved just half a second faster than the world around her. She was 28, with a tall, slightly delicate frame that made her look almost fragile until she started working. Then she became a force of purpose and focus. Her long, dark brown hair was tied in a messy bun at the base of her neck, several loose strands falling around the sharp lines of her face. Her skin was pale, the kind that freckled faintly under sun, but rarely saw it. Behind square-framed glasses, her hazel eyes were bright and restless, alive with ideas and calculations racing in spirals. She was not a soldier, not trained for endurance or violence or combat. She was an engineer who loved patterns, who loved the way data felt like a language she alone could hear. And yet, she had chosen this remote post because she believed in the work, because her mother had once told her that knowledge was a kind of shield, and Lily had never forgotten that. The station hummed around her, a symphony of quiet mechanical clicks, whirs, and murmurs. Her system was completing a data sweep on atmospheric pressure patterns when suddenly, without warning, her screen flickered. At first it was a harmless ripple, then another, then 3 sharp yellow alerts flashed in a row. Lily straightened, pushing her glasses up her nose. No, you weren't scheduled," she whispered, opening her diagnostic menu. The alerts didn't behave like natural interference. They were too perfectly spaced, too deliberate. Something was wrong. She leaned forward, narrowing her eyes, tracing the pattern. Her breath hitched. A security breach. The detection algorithm had been triggered from the outer corridor. Lily's heart thudded against her ribs. "That's impossible, unless—" She didn't finish the sentence. A heavy thud sounded beyond the door. Not metal falling, not machinery shifting. Something heavier. A body hitting a wall. Lily's stomach knotted. She rose slowly, her pulse quickening as she turned toward the door, listening. The second thud was closer. This time, she could hear the faint scrape of gear, the unmistakable sound of someone moving with intent. "Hello?" she called, instantly regretting it. Silence answered her. The tiny green indicator beside the doorway flicked to red. It was the station's integrity seal. Someone had forced it. Lily sprinted back to her console. Her training was minimal, barely enough for emergency situations, but she remembered the core rule drilled into her during induction. If the system is breached, protect the data, at all costs. Her hands flew across the controls. She bypassed protocols, ignored the blinking warnings, and dove straight for the emergency purge sequence, her own design, created out of paranoia and pride. A digital failsafe that would melt the core drives from the inside, ensuring nothing could ever be recovered. The computer asked, "Permanent action. Confirm?" Lily slammed her palm on yes. The lights flickered. The floor vibrated. A soft hum rose beneath her feet as the system spooled its final command. At that exact moment, the door exploded inward in a violent burst of smoke and fractured steel. Lily screamed, stumbling backward as the room filled with the sharp tang of gunpowder and cold air. Through the haze stepped a man built like an avalanche, tall, broad, wrapped in tactical black. He moved with chilling precision, every gesture efficient and deliberate. He was unmistakably military trained, but not by any nation Lily recognized. His face was harshly angular, the cheekbones sharp enough to catch light, the skin a weathered bronze tone that suggested years spent under unforgiving suns. His hair was cut close to the scalp, dark and coarse, while a faint scar curved along his jawline, like a question mark left by someone who once tried to end him. His eyes were the worst part, icy gray, devoid of warmth. The eyes of someone who had long ago buried whatever softness he may have once possessed. This was Dragos, leader of the mercenary group that intelligence agencies whispered about but rarely confronted. Lily had never seen him before, but she understood instantly. He was not someone who made threats. He made decisions. And right now, his decision was her. He stepped forward with a predator's calm. "You shouldn't have touched that console," he said, his voice low, smooth, nearly polite, yet dripping with contempt. Lily stumbled back, but Dragos moved impossibly fast. He grabbed her arm, his grip ironclad, yanking her toward him. His fingers dug painfully into her jacket. He scanned the now-dead monitors. "You purged it." His jaw flexed. Lily trembled, but some spark inside her refused to die. "I'm not letting you use it." Drago stared down at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then cold amusement flickered across his features. "You misunderstand, Miss Hart. You will restore it." "It's destroyed," she shot back. "Nothing's left." "Then you will rebuild it." Dragos jerked her forward, dragging her toward the blown-out doorway. Lily's pulse raced in wild, dizzying waves. She tried to wrench free, but his grip was unyielding. Another figure entered the doorway. A young man, thin and jittery, no older than 20. His blonde hair stuck out from beneath a loose beanie, and his pale face was peppered with freckles. Anxiety lived in his eyes, in the way they darted around the room as though expecting something to leap out of the shadows. He clutched his rifle too tightly, knuckles white. "Marek," Dragos ordered, not looking at him. "Clean their tracks. We're leaving." Marek nodded quickly, almost tripping over himself. His movements were clumsy, insecure, the opposite of Dragos's controlled violence. Lily registered him only vaguely. Another danger, but not the main threat. Dragos pulled her into the corridor. The cold hit her first, an icy slap against the warmth of the station. The second was the silence. The guards who should have been stationed along the hall were gone. Dragos didn't hesitate. He dragged her through the station's ruined entrance and into the open forest where the snow was falling in thicker sheets now, muting every sound except Lily's ragged breaths. "Walk," he ordered, "or be carried." Lily forced her legs to move. Her breath fogged in front of her, her mind racing. She needed to think. She needed to survive. She needed to leave a trail. Dragos' stride was long and merciless. Lily stumbled often, her boots slipping on ice, her lungs burning from the cold. But the scientist in her, the problem solver, refused to shut down. She reached slowly into her pocket. Her fingers brushed the end of her red scarf. A plan sparked. As Dragos shoved her through a cluster of low, ice-coated branches, Lily let her arm fall just enough for the scarf's edge to snag. She pulled. A piece tore free, fluttering behind them like a dying ember. Dragos didn't notice. Marek followed at a distance, glancing back over his shoulder every few steps as though expecting something, or someone, to emerge from the trees. They trudged deeper into the forest. Snow thickened. The landscape swallowed their tracks almost as soon as they made them. Lily's mind flashed through every survival lecture she'd been forced to attend. Leave signs. Stay calm. Think clearly. She let her hand brush the trunks as she passed, scraping faint marks with her nails. Meaningless to a casual observer, but unmistakable to anyone trained in tracking. Someone like Elias. She didn't know why his name surfaced so sharply in her mind. They had never met. She had only seen his file picture and read the brief line describing his role as external patrol. But in this moment, she needed to believe someone capable was coming. Dragos pushed her forward again, harder this time. "Move faster." "I'm trying," Lily gasped, slipping on a patch of ice. Dragos's fingers tightened painfully. "Then try harder." The cold was burrowing into her bones now. Her scarf was half gone, her hands numb. But somewhere behind them, perhaps miles away, she imagined a man and a dog finding the red fabric, reading the signs. Marek jogged up beside Dragos. "Boss," he whispered, "the purge signal. Someone might have picked it up." Dragos didn't stop walking. "Let them come." Marek looked uneasy. "What if it's military?" Dragos shot him a look that froze him mid-step. "I have never feared a soldier." His voice carried a deep, bone-deep conviction. A dangerous one. Lily shivered, not from cold now, but from the chilling certainty that Dragos believed every word. They climbed a narrow ridge, the wind sharper here. Snow swirled in ghostly spirals, stinging Lily's cheeks. She stumbled again, nearly falling. Dragos hauled her upright with a grunt of irritation. Somewhere far behind, beyond the whipping storm, a faint echo of something. Maybe a distant crackle of snow, maybe a sound only instinct could hear, slipped into the air. Dragos paused, head turning fractionally. Marek stiffened. Lily held her breath. "What is it?" Marek whispered. Dragos's eyes narrowed. Nothing yet, but his grip tightened on her arm. He shoved her forward again. Lily's pulse hammered with new hope. Someone was coming. And then, far behind them, unseen but inexorably closing the distance. Elias and Rook reached the dead station and began the hunt. The forest swallowed sound as Elias Grant pushed deeper into its icy heart, the cold mist coiling around him like a living thing. He moved quickly yet silently, one gloved hand resting lightly on his rifle, the other guiding branches aside. Rook trotted ahead, each step purposeful, his lean black frame a shadow slipping between the pines. The scent of danger had settled on him like frost. His ears twitched with every distant echo. Elias trusted that instinct more than he trusted the map on his wrist. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to change from a neutral observer into a hostile witness. The temperature dropped sharply, the wind rising and weaving between the trees with a mournful whistle. Elias inhaled slowly. His breath burned cold. He recognized a storm pattern shifting in. Every muscle in his body tightened. A storm meant danger. Visibility reduced, sound distorted, tracks buried. If Dragos intended to lose anyone following him, the blizzard would be his accomplice. Rook paused suddenly and looked back. Elias saw it in the dog's golden eyes. Urgency. "Track," Elias whispered. Rook lowered his nose to the snow, sniffing deeply, then surged forward again with renewed certainty. Elias followed, mind sharpening into combat focus. He no longer felt the cold. He only felt the hunt. He had been trained for high-threat tracking missions, but this one gnawed at something personal inside him, something he hated acknowledging. The image of a collapsed desert building flashed again. The small hand he couldn't save. The screams he hadn't reached in time. That memory had shaped him into the soldier he was now, relentless, unwilling to ignore the faintest sign of a life in danger. Lily Hart was out there, somewhere between the trees and the storm, and Elias would not fail her the way he had failed before. Rook stopped abruptly, his tail stiffened. Elias dropped to one knee beside him. "What is it, boy?" The dog shifted his weight, nose tracing a small indentation in the snow, shallow but unmistakable. A boot print. Elias inspected it closer. The edges were sharp, recent. Beside it, faint scrape marks, parallel, small. Lily must have dragged her hand against a tree as she walked. Elias felt a ripple of grim satisfaction. She's trying to be found. Good girl, he murmured under his breath, imagining her fighting through fear to leave these marks. He rose. Rook moved on, body vibrating with tension. The forest began tilting downhill toward a wider ravine. As they descended, the trees grew denser, their branches knit together like ribs of some ancient creature. The shadows deepened. Twice Rook froze, nose hovering just above the snow, breathing in slow, calculated inhales. Twice Elias felt the hair rise on his arms. The first time, Rook turned his head toward a bush dusted in frost. The dog stepped back, tail lowering. Elias approached slowly. Something metallic glinted under the snow. He crouched, brushing frost away. With careful fingers, a wire. A simple, nearly invisible trip line stretched low across the brush. "Pressure trigger," Elias muttered. He followed the line with narrowed eyes and found a small cluster of branches, too neatly arranged. He shifted one branch an inch. Beneath it lay a fragmentation device rigged to explode outward. Silent anger simmered in his chest. "They're laying traps." Rook barked once, a low, restrained alert. Elias praised him with a soft touch to his flank. They circled around the trap, continuing deeper. Minutes passed. Then Rook stopped a second time, hackles raised. Elias instantly dropped flat. He scanned the forest floor. There, beneath a drift of snow, was another device, a pressure plate cleverly disguised with leaves hardened by frost. Elias exhaled through his nose, steady and controlled. "Smart bastards," he whispered. "But not smarter than you, huh?" He brushed his hand along Rook's back. The dog's muscles were tense, ready. They avoided the trap. The forest eventually thinned into a clearing where the faint roar of rushing water reached Elias's ears. The unmistakable call of a creek swollen with meltwater and winter runoff. He stilled. Rook lifted his head, sniffing a shift in the air. The storm clouds above them thickened, swirling like a gray leviathan preparing to descend. The first flakes of heavier snow began to fall. "Storm's closing in," Elias murmured, eyes narrowing. "We're running out of time." Rook surged forward again, pulling mildly on the tether Elias clipped to his tactical belt. The dog was catching something, an emotional scent, heavy and sharp. Fear. Human fear. Lily's fear. Elias sped up, his heartbeat hammered not from fatigue, but from urgency. He climbed the small incline that bordered the creek, careful not to slip on the ice. As he reached the crest, he dropped low behind a fallen log, and what he saw made fury crystallize inside him. Drago stood near the edge of the water, his tall, muscular silhouette framed by the swirling snow. His black tactical jacket clung to his broad shoulders, and the air around him seemed colder, sharper, as if even the storm respected his presence. He held Lily by the upper arm, gripping her tightly. She looked smaller than he remembered from the file. Her hair, normally tied in a neat bun, now fell in disheveled strands across her face. Her glasses were gone, leaving her hazel eyes exposed and filled with defiance despite the terror trembling along her jaw. She was shivering violently. Her skin, pale to begin with, was nearly translucent from the cold. But she stood. She hadn't collapsed. She hadn't begged. Elias forced himself to breathe. On Dragos's left stood another mercenary, a new face. This man was tall but gaunt, with a narrow bone structure and deep-set eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. His beard was patchy, the hair unkempt. The way he held his rifle, loose, almost careless, told Elias he was nervous but experienced enough to hide it. A small scar ran from the corner of his eyebrow to the edge of his cheek, a mark that hinted at a past filled with violence and narrow escapes. Elias tagged him mentally, secondary threat, jittery but dangerous. Rook crouched low beside Elias, lips pulling back in a soundless snarl. Dragos's voice carried over the creek. "You will give me the access sequence." Lily shook her head. Dragos's jaw tightened. "The storm is coming, Miss Hart. The temperature will drop another 10 degrees within the hour. You will not survive without shelter. Speak, and you walk out of this forest alive." Lily lifted her chin despite the tremor that ran through her body. "I won't help you hurt people." Dragos leaned closer, his gray eyes boring into hers. "You overestimate your importance." Lily swallowed, a muscle in her neck twitching. "And you underestimate mine." Dragos's patience thinned visibly. He shoved her toward the creek's edge. She stumbled, boots slipping on the icy rock. The gaunt mercenary, Nikolai, judging by Dragos's brief barked command, tightened his grip on his rifle but made no move to intervene. Dragos grabbed Lily by the collar of her jacket and forced her onto her knees. "Last chance." "No," she whispered, voice raw but steady. Elias's fingers tightened on his rifle. Rage coiled through him like a live wire. He scanned the terrain. 2 enemies, one primary, one secondary. Lily near the creek, too close. If Dragos pushed her. Elias's pulse thrummed painfully. He had seconds to decide. Rook pressed his body lower, waiting for the signal. The snowfall thickened, wind picking up. Dragos's voice rose above it. "Very well." He hauled Lily up by her arm. She winced but kept her jaw set. "When the storm hits full force," Dragos said coldly, "I will leave you here. And the next time anyone finds you, if anyone finds you, they will find a body." Lily's breath escaped in a shudder. Still, she said nothing. Dragos exhaled sharply, then turned away from her, motioning for Nikolai to restrain her. And in that moment, just before Dragos could walk off, Rook stiffened. Elias saw it too. Dragos had exposed his back. Elias lowered his head, preparing to move. This was the moment everything balanced on a knife's edge. The snow fell harder. The creek roared louder. And Elias and Rook began their final silent approach, closing those last dangerous yards where life or death waited in equal measure. Snow surged sideways as the storm finally broke across the ravine, the wind howling through the pine spines like a wounded creature. The air stung with bitter cold, sharp enough to cut through thick gear, but none of it slowed Elias Grant. He advanced down the incline as quietly as a shadow, Rook at his side, both of them poised in a rhythm of lethal precision. Below them, Dragos gripped Lily Hart with a violence that twisted her slight frame, pressing her dangerously close to the creek. The rushing water roared like a fractured world. Elias saw Dragos's fingers tighten on Lily's collar, saw her legs kick weakly against the slick, icy bank as she fought to stay upright. Snow swirled around them in harsh spirals. Lily didn't scream. She couldn't. She was too busy clinging to consciousness. Her lips were blue now, her skin pale as frostbitten ice, her dark hair plastered to her face. Yet even so, her hazel eyes held their stubborn defiance. She had refused Dragos's demands for the access sequence, refused even as the storm closed its jaws around them. Dragos himself looked almost sculpted from the winter, broad, brutal, unmovable. Blood trickled down his left sleeve, a dark stain against the black fabric where he'd torn something earlier in the struggle, but it hadn't slowed him. His gray eyes were sharpened with cruelty, with purpose. The creek churned violently, swollen by meltwater and storm wind. Dragos jerked Lily closer to the water, his breath thick with frost. "This is your last chance," he growled. "Tell me the sequence." Lily coughed hard, her chest tight with cold. "No." Dragos didn't respond with anger. He responded with efficiency. He shoved her into the water. The scream she tried to give dissolved instantly under the crash of icy current. Her body disappeared, her red jacket vanishing beneath the violent swirl. Elias moved to fire, instinct, fury, and urgency all merging. But the gaunt mercenary Nikolai shifted, stepping into position to guard Dragos's flank. Elias stilled. He needed one shot. Only one. "Rook," Elias whispered. The canine's muscles twitched. Elias took a slow breath, lowered his rifle, inhaled the storm. Then he exhaled. The shot cracked across the ravine like a whip. Nikolai's body dropped instantly, slumping forward with no time for sound, the snow swallowing him. Dragos snapped his head toward the sound, eyes widening, just in time for Rook to launch from the crest like a silent, furious missile. The dog soared through the flurrying white-black fur, cutting across the storm like a streak of living vengeance. Dragos barely had time to react before Rook clamped onto his right forearm, the same arm he used to pin Lily. Dragos roared sharply, the sound raw and animal, as Rook's jaws sank deep and tore him backward. Pain jolted through Dragos, his balance breaking under the sudden force. His hand slipped off Lily's collar. Lily's body slid deeper into the water, her head tipping below the surface. Rook shook violently, pulling Dragos away, dragging the mercenary across the icy stones. Dragos slammed his boot into Rook's ribs, but the dog held firm, his growl a low thunder beneath the storm. Elias didn't watch Dragos fall. He was already sprinting toward the creek, vaulting over rocks, sliding down the slope in a half-controlled descent. His boots hit the water with a hard splash. The cold was immediate and brutal, stabbing up his legs into his spine, but he forced himself deeper. "Lily!" The current pulled her away from the bank, her limbs loose, her hair fanning beneath the water, like dark ink swirling through glass. Her face was turned upward, but submerged, bubbles rising past her lips. Elias plunged forward, fighting the icy drag, his breath burning in his lungs. He reached her coat, fingers closing around the thick, wet fabric with a desperate grip. With a guttural sound, he hauled her toward him, her body limp as a soaked sheet. He dragged her out of the water, stumbling onto the bank and collapsing to his knees, pulling her against him. "Lily? Lily!" Her head lolled, eyes closed, her lips pale and parted. No breath moved through her chest. Elias felt something inside him shatter. He lowered her gently, his hands shaking, not from the cold, but from the terror rising in him. He tilted her head back. Water streamed from her mouth. "Come on," he whispered, voice breaking against the wind. He pressed his hands to her sternum and began chest compressions, each push fueled by fear and fury and memory. "Breathe, breathe." He slammed his palm against her chest again, and again, and again. Snow collected in his hair, on his shoulders, melting against the heat of his desperation. His breath fogged over her still face. "Lily, fight!" Then, a small twitch of her fingers, a weak convulsion. Her body jerked, water spewing from her mouth as she gasped sharply, choking, inhaling air mixed with panic. Elias sagged forward in relief, his forehead briefly touching hers. Good, you're okay. Stay with me." Lily's eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. Her voice trembled. "Elias?" "I've got you," he said, voice hoarse. Behind him, Dragos tore free from Rook, blood spraying from his shredded arm. The mercenary stumbled backward, lifting a pistol with his left hand. He wasn't dead. He wasn't finished. His eyes held a vicious rage. Rook's ears pricked instantly. The dog spun, poised to attack again. "Elias!" Lily rasped, pointing weakly. Elias didn't turn. He already sensed the danger. Dragos pulled the trigger. Rook moved first. He launched sideways toward Elias, intercepting the bullet's path. The force of impact slammed the dog mid-air, his yelp sharp and heartbreakingly short before he crashed onto the snowy ground. "Rook!" Elias roared. The sound ripped from him like something primal. Dragos staggered, blood loss pushing him into a slow collapse. Raised the pistol again, but his hand shook violently. The storm howled around them, trees bending under its might. And then, over the vicious wind, a distant reverberation began. A throbbing mechanical pulse. Elias looked up. A helicopter's searchlight broke through the storm's veil, slicing through the darkness, illuminating the ravine in harsh white. Rescue, but they were seconds too late. Elias lifted his rifle with a speed born of fury, sighting Dragos's chest. Dragos fired at him a final time, but the bullet missed, skimming the air beside Elias's head. Elias took the shot. Dragos jerked, stumbled back, and finally fell into the snow, his body folding into the white hush like a dark stain washed away by the storm. Rook lay motionless on his side, his breath shallow, blood staining his glossy black fur. Lily crawled toward him weakly, tears streaming down her cold, reddened cheeks. "Rook, sweet boy," Elias fell beside the dog, hands trembling as he pressed against the wound. "No, no, no, stay with me." Rook blinked slowly, pain clouding his golden eyes. The helicopter descended in a roaring gust, its rotors blasting snow into a furious cyclone. A spotlight swept over them. Two figures in tactical rescue gear sprinted toward the trio. Elias kept pressing on Rook's wound, his face twisted with anguish. "Hold on, please, hold on!" Rook's breathing hitched, shallow and uneven. The medics reached them, voices shouting over the storm. Lily clutched Elias's sleeve, shivering violently as the medics wrapped her in thermal foil. "He saved you," she whispered, crying quietly. "He saved both of us." Elias didn't answer. His throat was tight, his heart hammering. His hands never left Rook. The helicopter crew lifted Lily into the cabin first, securing her to a stretcher. Another medic knelt beside Elias. "We've got him," the man said gently. His voice carried sincerity, warm despite the cold chaos. Elias forced himself to loosen his grip, though it felt like tearing his soul away. Together, the medics lifted Rook onto a rigid rescue board, stabilizing him. Blood smeared the snow where he had lain. Dragos's corpse lay silent in the storm behind them, his threat extinguished just as the rescue team signaled extraction. The helicopter tilted, rotors screaming. Snow lifted like ghosts rising. Elias climbed aboard, his eyes locked on Rook's weak breathing and Lily's trembling form. The moment the cabin sealed and the ground dropped away beneath them, Elias's shoulders sagged. Not from defeat, but from the overwhelming collision of relief and fear. Rook was alive. Lily was alive. Dragos was dead. But the cost had carved itself into the deepest part of Elias's heart, and the storm carried them home. The first warmth of spring drifted through the wide courtyards of the Lantoul Regional Military Medical Center, sunlight catching on the budding branches that lined the walkways. The cruel winter storms of the northern forest felt like a lifetime ago, though the memories still lived quietly beneath the skin. Lily Hart stepped out of a transport van, and pulled the collar of her coat closer to her neck. Not out of cold, but out of habit. A lingering reflex from weeks spent shivering through trauma and recovery. She stood straighter, her breath steadying as she gazed across the expansive lawn. She was healthier now. The bruising from her ordeal had faded. Her skin, though still pale, carried a soft vitality that had once seemed impossible with the cold death of the creek clutching at her pulse. Her hair, dark brown and slightly wavy, now brushed her shoulders. She let it down more often these days, no longer tied harshly back in a practical knot. Her hazel eyes, once frantic, then hollow with shock, had regained a spark, a gentleness with a new layer of quiet strength. She was still slender, still looked like someone more at home behind a console than in the wilderness, but something about her presence now held a grounding warmth. She scanned the garden until she found him. Elias Grant sat beneath a large oak tree, its branches casting shifting shadows across his plain gray t-shirt and jeans. Out of uniform, he looked different, less like an instrument of the Navy and more like a man rediscovering his own name. His tall frame rested against the trunk with a slight slouch unusual for someone trained to exist in rigid posture. His hair had grown in a little since the mission, the short brown strands brushing the tops of his ears. A faint stubble covered his angled jaw, making him look younger and older all at once. His face, always stern, had softened over the weeks. The harsh lines of discipline had eased, revealing a man who was learning, perhaps for the first time in years, how to sit still without living inside a battlefield. And there, lying on a soft blanket beside him, was Rook. The black shepherd was thinner now, his fur shaved in a patch over his ribs where a long line of staples gleamed beneath healing skin. His body told the story of what he had endured, the bullet that tore through him, the surgery that saved him, the long days of sedation, trembling, gradual strength returning. But his eyes, bright golden and full of awareness, lifted the moment Lily approached. His tail thumped once, twice, then steadily a rhythm of recognition and joy. Lily's heart swelled. She crossed the grass quickly, unable to hide her smile. Elias looked up at the sound of her footsteps. For a brief moment, surprise softened his gray eyes. Then something warmer bloomed, subtle but real. He smiled, a small curve, a gentle shift, but it transformed him. Lily stopped a few feet away, suddenly aware of emotion tightening her throat. "You made it out here on your own," Elias said, his voice deep but calmer than she'd ever heard it. "I wasn't sure the doctors would clear you for travel so soon." "I work fast," she replied, trying to keep her tone light, though her chest fluttered with relief at seeing him alive and healing. "And I owed someone a visit." Elias's gaze dipped momentarily, humility glinting in his eyes. "You didn't owe anything." Lily knelt beside Rook, who nosed her hand eagerly. She stroked his head gently, careful of the area surrounding his wound. "Hi, hero," she whispered. "Still stealing all the attention?" Rook let out a soft woof, leaning heavily into her touch. Elias chuckled under his breath, a sound Lily had never heard from him. It startled her in the best way. She turned her attention back to him. How are you?" Elias didn't answer right away. He glanced toward the distant courtyard where soldiers and medical personnel walked between buildings. His jaw worked, like he was choosing how honest to be. "Recovering," he finally said. "Physically, I'm fine." His hand drifted unconsciously toward Rook, fingers brushing the dog's fur with gentle reverence. But watching him on that helicopter, thinking I might lose him, that nearly finished me. Lily's eyes softened. I know. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze deep and searching. You scared me too, he admitted. You fought so hard, and still. I almost didn't reach you in time. Lily shook her head gently. But you did. The simple truth of the words seemed to settle something inside him. He exhaled, slow and steady. They fell into a quiet stillness, the kind that didn't demand conversation. The sunlight filtered through the oak leaves, casting broken gold across the blanket where Rook lay. Lily eventually sat beside Elias, shoulders just inches from brushing, the warmth between them gentle and unforced. After a moment, she spoke softly. Thank you for everything, for not giving up on me. Elias looked down at her, the light catching the angles of his face. You're giving me too much credit. No, she said firmly. You came for me, even when it meant disobeying orders, risking your life, and fighting through everything standing in your way. You saved me, Elias. His eyes flickered with something she couldn't name. Regret, relief, awe. Then he looked away, jaw tightening in a subtle, vulnerable expression. You and Rook saved me too, he murmured. I spent years doing the job because it was all I knew. But when I thought I was losing both of you, something changed. He paused, voice softening. I remembered what hope felt like. The words lingered in the air between them, warm in spite of the breeze. Lily's throat tightened. She reached out and rested her hand over his. His fingers stiffened, then relaxed beneath her touch, responding gently, cautiously, like a man long deprived of human connection, learning the shape of it again. They stayed like that, hands touching lightly, the world unhurried around them. Rook shifted, rolling slowly onto his other side with a soft grunt. Lily laughed quietly. He's the bravest soul I've ever met, she said. He always has been, Elias agreed. He's saved more lives than I can count, and now he's saved mine, again. And he saved me, Lily added. Twice. Elias gave a small nod. He's a survivor. So are you, she said. Their eyes met, and this time neither looked away. Minutes passed in silence. Finally, Lily took a slow breath. I made a decision, she said. Elias turned fully toward her, brows raised slightly. What kind? She smiled faintly. I put in a request to transfer out of the environmental station. Instead, I asked to join the support division attached to your unit. Remote systems, tactical data analysis, field mission coordination. Something where I can actually make a difference and not be alone in a snow-covered bunker. Elias blinked, stunned. You did? Yes, her voice softened. I want to help, and I want to be where I feel safe. Elias's expression changed, slowly, like dawn breaking. With us? She nodded once. With you and Rook. Rook thumped his tail against the blanket, as if fully understanding the moment. Elias inhaled deeply, emotion tightening his voice. I'd like that, he said quietly. She smiled. Good, because I'm already approved. Elias's low laugh was warm and disbelieving. Of course you are. She leaned back against the trunk beside him, letting the sun touch her face. Elias did the same. Rook stretched between them, his tail brushing their legs. For the first time in a long time, Elias felt no weight on his shoulders. No mission pulling him forward. No ghosts dragging him back. Just sunlight. Just the quiet sound of Rook breathing steadily. Just the warmth of Lily's presence beside him. Lily glanced over at him, eyes reflecting the bright sky. You know, she said softly, Someone once told me that sometimes the darkest storms lead to the clearest skies. Elias looked at her, one corner of his mouth lifting. Did you just make that up? Maybe. It's terrible, he said. She laughed, a lovely, genuine sound, and nudged him lightly with her shoulder. You smiled, though. I did, he admitted. The sunlight deepened across the lawn. The oak leaves rustled softly. Rook fell asleep, breathing even and peaceful. And the three of them sat beneath the spreading branches, held by a moment that felt like a promise. A new beginning, a new sunrise. The kind that only survivors could understand. In the quiet glow of that new sunrise, Elias, Lily, and Rook reminded us of something the world forgets too easily. That miracles are often woven from courage, loyalty, and the simple grace of people who refuse to give up on one another. We wait for grand signs from heaven, yet sometimes the miracle is a soldier choosing hope after years of darkness, a wounded K9 rising again when all odds were against him, or a young woman finding strength in the very moment she felt most fragile. And just like them, in our own everyday struggles, the silent battles, the private storms, the moments when we feel alone, there is always a spark waiting to be rekindled. A reminder that God sends guardians in many forms, a loyal friend, a stranger who shows kindness, or even a challenge that teaches us who we truly are. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need a little light today. Leave a comment about your own small miracles, your moments of faith, or the guardian angels who once walked beside you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so more stories of hope, courage, and second chances can find their way to those who need them. May God bless you, protect your family, guide your steps, and place His hand over your life, just as He watched over Elias, Lily, and brave Rook. Amen.